Yeah, Nikki, thank you so much for coming on today. I have been chatting the endless amounts of conversations around hormones. As you can probably imagine, that I chat about it a lot. I'm sure you obviously
Yeah.
do too. But what I'm noticing is the amount of conversations that I'm having from like friends and family where people are finally sort of taking note of that. I feel like hormones have become a little bit more mainstream, haven't they? So like now it's as if people are, yeah, I guess like taking more of an interest to their hormones, which maybe they wouldn't have done. Maybe it's also my age. People were thinking about having children, potentially having children. Um, so yeah, I was just like, I was chatting to loads of friends. I was like, hold on. I know who I need to talk to. It is Nikki.
Well, I'm delighted that people are realizing the power of hormones. I think it's a challenge because hormones, they're invisible. You can't see them, you can't feel them. It's difficult to, really get to grips with them because you don't, as I say, they're intangible, literally. But and also the other thing is that you therefore can't appreciate is that hormones are fundamental to our health. But they're doing all their work like it is inside you. So you don't realize that. You don't realize that actually, your muscles, your bones, your digestive system, your brain, every single system in your body, there is not one system that we say, oh, that hormones don't play a role there. They do, because they go everywhere in your body. So they are absolutely amazing and powerful, which is obviously why I think they are amazing, and I'm studying them in depth, and I'm the hormone detective to try and make it a little bit more clearer, the amazing importance of hormones, and also to point out that to some extent we have a control over our hormones. We can harness our hormones, but either in a good or a bad way, if you see what I mean. So that's the good news. We do have agency over how our hormones work for us.
Yeah, and I think I'm also very excited that people are taking like
Mm.
consideration because, like you say, they are invisible. I remember when I had hypothalamic amenorrhea, even the recovery was difficult because I couldn't see it. So, like, you
Yes,
break your leg, right? And yet you know not to go for
exactly.
a run because you can physically see it. Whereas if you're missing period, well, no one knows. Or like you can sort of cover it up a little bit more, can't you? So,
Mm.
obviously, you're a doctor and an author, and people can work with you one to one as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, by the way, a reason when I was a youngster, a teenager, the reason I wanted to study medicine and hormones was because I was just intrigued. I wanted to understand how it was that if I go to my ballet class, I was going to my ballet class because I love it and enjoy it, but I knew instinctively if I trained, exercised, then I would improve. But it was like, I wonder how that works. And so studying medicine, I realized that hormones is where the answer lay, because I think that's a really important point you make. If there's, something physical, like if you break your leg and you've got a cast on your plaster on your leg, it's pretty obvious there's a problem. And you would treat that with respect and you would let it heal, then you gradually rehab back. But because hormones are, as we said, invisible, and you mentioned FHA, when your periods stop, you don't realize that the lack of periods is actually causing some issues, some health challenges for your body. But it's not obvious. You don't have that break in the leg and the cast on your leg to sort of to remind you that this is what's happening, and therefore track that recovery process. You can't, it's difficult. Anyway, so in terms of my work in the hormone field, that's why I wanted to focus on hormones. And now I'm in the good position that I've got a lot of experience, done a lot of research in it, continue to do so. And so, yes, I wanted to communicate this information in my books, Hormones, Health and Human Potential, aptly named. And then also, as you say, I offer advisory appointments to people with well, when I say hormone issues, this is the whole point. You might not realize you do. You might come saying, "Oh, my periods have stopped. Why is that?" And so then we look into it. So, but all ages. So it could be that situation of periods, either problematic periods or periods have stopped, or for the older age group, I want to fly the flag. Perimenopause, menopause, when there's a big sea change in hormones as well. So I offer advisory appointments covering any aspect of hormones like that.
Yeah. Love it. So, in terms, you mentioned about how hormones are connected to everything that we do, and obviously your book around human potential. Why are they so important? And also, what are some of the signs and symptoms that if your hormones maybe weren't working at their potential, that maybe people would feel?
So the reason why hormones are so powerful, and we're shouting about it and letting people know, is that what does a hormone do? I suppose is what we want to know the answer to. So the hormones, these whiz around in the body, in the bloodstream, which is why they can access every single cell in the body. So that's great. But when they arrive at a target cell, they go into the cell, they go to the nucleus where the DNA resides. And so everyone knows that DNA is the blueprint for life. But have you ever wondered how that sort of comes to life, right? Okay, so here's this inert structure of the DNA, but how does that translate to making certain proteins? Well, the hormones make that decision for the DNA. The hormones go in to the DNA, say, listen, this person's just been to a ballet class, right? They've been doing lots of exercise, and actually we need quick, sharp, some muscle proteins to be produced, thanks. And they will tell it to produce whatever the DNA needs to produce for that person in that moment, you see? So that's how hormones literally sort of managing our health, you see, and our adaptations to what we do to the body. So if you are, I mean, everyone knows the example that if you eat something and your blood glucose will start to go up, insulin, people have heard of insulin. Insulin goes into the cells and says, right, there's lots of glucose in the bloodstream now, so take advantage of it. Let it come in. Let's build some muscles. Let's have some action. So the hormones are all the time just keeping everything nice and calm, like the glucose levels, but also responding to what you do. If you go and challenge your body to do a ballet class or whatever it is, then the hormones will be on your side to help you get the benefits from that. And this is the if you treat the hormones nicely, right?
Yeah,
If you
right.
overstress them, if you say, look, go and do this exercise, but I'm not giving you any fuel to do it, the hormones are like, oh, come on. That's going to be really tricky because actually we've got to prioritize just keeping everything calm and stable. We haven't got enough resources, energy in the tank to tell the DNA to make, muscle protein or bones or whatever, So, that is the problem if you don't give the hormones something to work with. So give them the exercise. Yes, give them the nutrition, give them some rest and recovery. Because by the way, what I've described, the instructions to the DNA, it takes time for that to happen. You actually get fitter when you're asleep. So I can summarize this in what Hippocrates said 2,000 years ago. So we have to look back 2,000 years ago. It's like this guy was onto something. He said if we could give every individual just the right amount of nourishment, just the right amount of exercise, not too little, not too much, we'd have found the surest way to health. At that time, 2,000 years ago, he didn't realize that the conduit between your inputs and the output of your health, he didn't realize that in between that, inside your body are the hormones. But I can now reveal that today. That is what's driving the adaptations to what you do. So hormones are fundamental for directing the expression of DNA and therefore our mental and physical health, both. And also the hormones will adapt to what you give them to work with.
So really, it like fundamentally, what it comes down to is if you do too little, or too much exercise, you have to find your sweet spot. So then the hormones can work together to be able to create.
Yeah, in the right way. So it's the Goldilocks thing, right? You want to find the porridge that's just the right temperature, not too hot, not too cold, right? So you've got to find the sweet spot, and the sweet spot will be individual.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of let's say women who are coming and they're saying, I don't understand. I'm doing exactly the same as my friend, in terms of what they're eating, how much training they're doing, blah, 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 but she's fine. She's having menstrual cycles and everything is great. And I don't understand, mine have stopped. It's like, yeah, because your sweet spot is slightly different from someone else. So I think that's the key thing, that you've got agency over your hormones, which is important. They're really powerful, but also you know, it's kind of a little bit, you've got to work out what that sweet spot is for you. And it's, you know, it's going to vary a lot on the individual. It's going to vary on your age, on your sex, all sorts of things. So I think, unfortunately, that's where sometimes people get too caught up in trends on social media saying everyone needs to do X or Y. It's like, how can that possibly be true? We're not clones. We're not all the same. We're different, right? So that's really the important message.
On that part of the importance of making sure everyone knows it's so individual, and yeah, like when we follow that influencer that says you need to do 10,000 steps and you need to drink a smoothie every single day, are there any blanket things that actually, as a whole, as anyone with the female hormones throughout their body, that they should be doing? For example, around like the whole fasted training thing.
Well, I refer back to Hippocrates. So there isn't just like, oh, you do this particular formula, but that you have to have the principles in mind. So, of course, we should be doing exercise. We should be moving because that will stimulate the production of the so-called anabolic hormones to build muscle and bone, and it makes us feel good. So, absolutely, we should be doing exercise, no doubt about that. But not too little, not too much, right? And definitely, I think, not overtraining. And I have to say, I'm a little bit like that. I like to do, I want to do exercise every day, but sometimes actually holding back a little bit and remembering that you get fitter when you're asleep. And, on that rest recovery day, I've renamed it Positive Adaptation Day. So that's a general principle. Please do exercise, ideally exercise that you like, because then you do it consistently. And ideally a type of exercise or a combination of exercises that are going to cover all the fitness areas. So don't just do running. Don't just focus on cardiovascular exercise. You also need to think about muscle strength and, strength and conditioning, as we call it, flexibility, neuromuscular control. So the general principle in exercise is that do exercise, cover all the groups, do something you enjoy, and don't overtrain. A positive adaptation. So that's the general exercise thing. Nutrition, again, my grandmother would always say you have to have 3 regular meals a day. And breakfast is very important meal of the day. You know what? Just looking back at some of these old-fashioned things, so-called, actually are the fundamental things. Our body needs feeding, needs fuel to work. And how are you going to fill it up? You're going to fill it up. It's not like a car where you wait until it's like right on empty and then fill it up. Just keep it ticking along at a nice level. So 3 regular meals a day. As my grandmother would say, very important. And each meal must have a portion of the key food groups in terms of complex carbs and protein. Okay, so newsflash, complex carbs are not evil. They're not bad. You don't just look at bread and a slice of bread and suddenly you balloon. That's not true, right? And they're actually really, really important because complex carbs are key for fueling quality exercise. Quality exercise I'm talking about, right? And also they're very important for brain. Brain takes 20% of our energy demand. So something for nutrition everyone can do is just stick to, remember my grandmother, have 3 regular meals a day, cover your food groups, and do break your overnight fast, i.e. do have breakfast. It's called that for a reason. All this old fasting and everything, we already have inbuilt a fast when we're asleep, right? We've got hopefully 8 hours. We're having 8 hours sleep. We've got an 8-hour fast inbuilt. That's done and dusted. So you don't need to extend that fast. And especially training in the morning. Yeah, go on.
What I love about this is like, it's not that complicated.
No, well, that's what I mean. I go at the time when my grandmother was saying all these things, and saying, oh, you don't just eat protein, you need to have your carbohydrates as well, and you need breakfast. And it was like, at the time you think, oh, it's just my grandmother, but it's actually, do you know what? Common sense prevails, Hippocrates prevails. And so specifically breakfast is important, and that includes fasted training. So let's imagine you've had your 8-hour sleep, hopefully, so you're fasted. Your cortisol will be high. Cortisol is a stress response hormone. It's meant to be high, by the way, because it wakes you up. Cortisol awakening response, great. If you don't have breakfast promptly after you wake up, you'll still be in a fasted state, stress state. Your cortisol will remain high. Now, go and do some exercise as well, your cortisol will go even higher and be sustained high. Cortisol is a catabolic hormone. It breaks stuff down. So it breaks down muscle, favors the deposition of fat. And hold on a minute, you're doing exercise because you want to build muscle. So you see what I mean? It's counteractive. It will cancel out, as it were, right? So if you want to have decent exercise, definitely you need to eat something before you do that. Now, breakfast, I mean, I do understand. I know people are going to say, hold on a minute. I have to go to the gym or whatever. I have to do it really early at 6 a.m. I don't feel like eating anything before. I'm sorry, brutally honest, don't accept that. I used to have to be 6 a.m. every day of the week, ready, changed to swim in competitive swimming. So yeah, it was horrible. We had to get up at 5:15. So we ate something there and then we got to the pool, etc. So something, not a full breakfast. That's not practical. I appreciate that. But whatever works for you, and you've got to experiment. Is it banana? Is it a cereal bar? Is it just something small just to have in the tanks to keep the cortisol calm, to give you some energy to do the exercise? And then you do the exercise, and then after the exercise, you do have your breakfast, with the protein and the carbs and everything like that. Okay. So that's really essential. So I know people are saying, oh, they have to do the fast training in the morning because they haven't got time. Sorry, don't accept. Oh, I don't feel like it. Don't accept. You just have to. It's not
Have
a
to do
thing you
it.
think about. You just do it. Like we would have there ready the cereal or the banana ready. You just eat it.
And
You don't think about it.
Yeah, and I do think there's an element of like taking ownership, isn't there?
Mm,
Of being like, okay, yeah, you might not fancy it, or like you might not be someone that wakes up hungry. That's fine, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. So are
mm.
we saying really, if someone is listening to this and they're still doing fasted training, say they go to a CrossFit class at 6 a.m. and they haven't eaten anything, are we saying that it's pretty pointless?
We're saying don't do it. We're saying that you won't get the benefits you could do from this training, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and you won't train to your best, to your full potential. Therefore, you can't harness the hormones because the hormones will be in panic mode or anxiety mode, if I can put it like that. The cortisol suppresses the production of other stuff because it sees this as an emergency situation. The court, right? So what we're saying is, just try and rethink this. If it means getting up 15 minutes earlier, I'm sorry, so be it. We could have got up at 5:30 and gone straight to the pool, but we didn't. We got up at 5:15. So you have to do it. And also, I accept it is a little bit of a personal thing. What works for you? My brother would have some of that fruit malt stuff. My sister would prefer banana, I would prefer cereal. So you've got to find out, but it's got to be carbohydrate dense. Any of
Okay.
those food groups, that's a piece of toast, whatever. You try and figure out what it is for you. And even if it's just a small amount, the other key thing is, so say you have a banana, at least that's something, but then take to the class, a bottle, fill up your bottle with fruit juice, right? That's a very cheap sports drink, by the way. And so you can be topping up with carbohydrate as you go. Now, people are going to say, oh, hold on a minute. Fruit juice, lots of sugar, bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you drink a bottle of a whole, load of fruit juice and you're sitting on the sofa, I agree, that would be really bad advice. But you're going to be using it during that session. So you see what I mean? Just have something before you actually go. But then if you haven't been able to manage a lot, and it's going to be an intense session, and you want to get the most out of that session, absolutely, you need a bottle of fruit juice to be sipping that and make sure that's finished by the time you finish the session. So you're fueled as you go along. Then you can have your refueling within 20 minutes of your breakfast with your protein and your carbs.
Okay, amazing. So that's summed us up for that's got us ready for the morning. If someone chooses not to do that and they continue to fasted train, they maybe then so they do their CrossFit class, then they shower, then they go to the office, and then maybe they have breakfast at around 10 a.m. So they've increased
Mm,
that huge window. What symptoms can we start to see? So, for example, I know that I lost my period, and I think a lot of people watching this, if they follow me, will know that one of the things
mm,
that's quite crucial is losing their periods. But I feel like there's so much, there's so many other symptoms, Nikki, that people are living with that doesn't necessarily, they don't necessarily have to be an athlete or to work
mm,
out a lot. They could be a mum or just someone just busy living life that they don't know are symptoms of sad hormones.
Yeah, yeah. No, well, you're right. I mean, the extreme thing is, if you do this, as you say, day after day, month after month, etc., then yeah, probably the ultimate thing is your periods will stop. But there's a build up to that. They don't suddenly switch off. And also, I accept that, sometimes things don't always go according to plan. And I remember once my son was telling me he took a banana out when he went cycling, but it fell out, and so that was a mistake. And mistakes happen and whatever. So, you know, we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for consistency. So don't beat yourself up if actually one day it doesn't quite work out. It's like that's okay. Once in a while, the body can cope with that. But if intentionally you're doing this over a long period of time, that's when the problems start. The first sign of unhappy hormones would be actually, you're just going to feel a little bit more fatigue than you would expect from what you're doing. You're just feeling a little bit not on the ball, both physically and mentally. This is the other thing, it's the mental thing. But you see, because it's a very subtle thing and it's a gradual thing, you won't immediately notice this. But actually, on reflection, if you look back, oh, actually, compared to a month ago, I'm now feeling more tired than I would expect. I'm doing the same thing. And, think you're not just quite up to where you would expect you would be. And, in terms of the quality of the exercise, gradually, actually, you won't be able to, I don't know, whatever, perform as well as you were, right? Again, subtly, not sudden drop off the cliff. So this is the thing why people don't register it, because it's a very subtle decline in some of these things, the signs of sad hormones, as you put it. And then, also, for example, poor sleep. Poor sleep is actually because your body is like, hold on, I wasn't fed properly during the day. Can you wake up and get some food, right? It's like, this is too much of a low energy state. So these are very sort of subtle things. And then the periods might continue, but they might become a little bit more irregular, initially a little bit heavier, interestingly, because the progesterone is dropping, right? So you're not ovulating properly. And then ultimately, if you carry on like this, then ultimately the thing is that the periods will stop. But already by the time your periods stop, the hormones are pretty unhappy, by the way, because the body will try and resist this happening. The other thing is, what about your body weight? Because some people might be doing this thinking this is going to help them either lose weight or maintain weight or whatever their objective is. And so initially you might lose a little bit of weight, not much, but then it seems to stabilize, and this is frustrating. So the person will offer and think, all right, I need to be more restrictive because I
Yes.
can't understand why I'm not losing weight, but but actually it's because you're trying to fight against the safety mechanism inbuilt in your hormones. If your hormones realize there's not enough energy, it's dials down the metabolic rate. So when your mobile phone shows up, warning, low power, you go into low power mode, switch off non-essential apps. So the same thing, the body will slow the whole thing down to reduce the loss of energy, And so your weight, typically, you might go down a little bit, but then what I'm telling you, it will stabilize. And so people can be in low energy availability, but they're actually still within a sort of quote healthy range of weight, which is often it's disconcerting. Because you think, well, hold on, why is that? And it gets confusing. But that's why, because the body is subtly doing its adaptive changes, but not in the way that you would want it to. But don't blame the body, the hormones. I hate that expression, unbalanced hormones. It's like, oh my God, don't blame the hormones. The hormones know what they're doing. They've had millions of years of evolution, even longer than 2,000 years ago for poultry. They know their job. They know their business. Their business is to keep you alive. Ideally keep you healthy, but the priority is just keep you alive, just keep you ticking over. So, that's why things will sort of wind down. Okay.
Digestion, hair, skin.
Yes, exactly. All these sorts, just not feeling right. And ultimately, can be more risk of injury, bone stress injuries in particular, but soft
Okay.
tissue injuries. So, this is the thing. It's very confusing because hormones act in all parts of the body. So it's like, why am I getting all these things? But actually, it's all tied together.
And we see this a lot in like new mums and things,
Yep.
and like people, because when people are so busy,
Yes.
we're, and like, not sleeping well, maybe with with having the baby or whatever, and you're
Yep.
just constantly on the go because that's you're told to just keep going. This is your hormones when the like the brain fog or the digestion or
Yep.
heavy periods, PMS, that sort of thing. That's little signs that our hormones are saying, hey, something's not right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I get it. Women, we're really resilient and we sort of push ourselves and we want to do everything. Otherwise, we think that we're being shown that we're weak or something. But actually, the most important thing is you've got to look after yourself ultimately, because you've only, this is your body, this is your life. And if you're busy doing like looking after your child or whatever, or work or whatever, you cannot do that job to your full ability, to your full potential, unless you are fundamentally as healthy as you can be. So actually, you just need to take a step back and say, hold on a minute, am I just running myself ragged, going round and round in this vicious
Yeah.
circle, and things are gradually going downwards? It's harder to recover from a downward spiral rather than nipping it in the bud and being looking at it objectively and saying, okay, fine, I need to make sure I'm having that snack before I go and exercise or whatever.
So yeah, so I guess that leads on to my next question. And someone's feeling rubbish. They got brain fog. They might not even be an athlete, Nikki. They might just be
Oh
someone
yeah.
that's busy and they heavy periods, insomnia,
Hmm.
bloating, that kind of thing. What do they do from here?
Well, yes, exactly. And I think that's a really important point, Chloe. We're not talking about elite athletes.
No,
There
yeah,
was some people, if I mention REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, I mean, the name doesn't help. They assume that's people who are in sport,
yeah,
right? But not necessarily. It could just be that you're a busy woman, right? And you think you need to be busy and you need to
yeah.
prove that you're busy and doing everything and you're doing your exercise, all these sorts of things. You're productive as you feel.
We see it in the high performing woman, don't we?
Yeah,
That
exactly. So, and in whatever we're talking about, so not necessarily even in sport or athletes, as you say. So, whatever you're doing in your life, you feel you got a drive about you, which is great, and we want to applaud that. But the only problem is if you use that in a very rigid way, right? I'm sticking to this. I've got to go to the gym, even if I'm feeling dreadful. And I saw that I shouldn't eat. I saw that somewhere that I should do fasted training, and you stick rigidly to this thing, that's when the problem is. So use that determination, that drive, use it in a flexible way. It's like, do you
okay.
know what? I'm feeling really exhausted. I need to, not do any exercise today. And oh goodness, that was really bad. I didn't have the banana to hand, to have before I go to the gym in the morning. I must make sure I do that, So just doing a self-check, and if you notice subtle things that aren't quite right, act on them. Look at what's happening, and then you can make those adjustments. You can self-correct. You know.
And how would we self correct? So you said about the no fasting. What other and maybe slowing down, maybe taking a rest day? Is there anything else that we can be doing, or is it fundamentally come down to be like slow down?
Well, I think it's looking at all those things in combination.
Okay.
So you can't just say, "Oh, well, I'm going to eat the banana." I've heard Nikki and Chloe saying you've got to eat the banana before I go to the gym. I said, fine, I'll do that. But if you ignore the other stuff, if you don't have your orange juice while you're at the gym, if you don't have your breakfast refueling promptly after in 20 minutes, if you're not following that up with a good lunch and dinner, do you see what I mean?
Good
Then
sleep.
that's the thing. So
Yeah.
it's the consistency over all the areas and just
Okay.
making modifications as you go. So getting those fundamentals with the nutrition right. Also, anyone that's listening to this and not taking vitamin D, that's also a priority. Low levels of vitamin D, so common in the UK, right? And that has a big impact on our well-being, on our bone health, muscle recovery, and immunity. So, again, I think the only supplement that's absolutely everybody should be taking is vitamin D. So don't go, oh, I've seen the latest supplement is X, Y, or Z. It's just like, remember my grandmother, just stick to the fundamentals. So get that nutrition nailed. Okay. The exercise, absolutely be doing it. But, if your schedule is such that you're just feeling really tired, it doesn't matter. Take that day as your positive adaptation day. Be flexible. Okay, I'll do that session or what I was planning to do another day. Do you see what I mean? So you have to go with the flow and see how things work out like that. And also, prioritize sleep. Another thing my grandmother would say.
Mhm.
And sleep is the chief nourisher in life's great feast. She didn't say that, by the way. Shakespeare did in Macbeth. So, but the quality of sleep. Are you going to bed at a a reasonable time every night? She did used to say before midnight, and she's right. A few years ago, study comes out because all these good hormones, these anabolic hormones, these are released around about midnight-ish. So if you're going to bed, too close to midnight, you haven't got the hormones won't. So make sure you're going to bed. Well, I mean, I'm not going to give a particular time, but definitely before midnight, put it that way. Okay. Make sure you're going to bed at a regular time. All the things we're told. Don't look at the screens and everything because the light, the frequency of the light emitted from these things disrupts sleep. So, sleep hygiene strategies, look at your sleep. Are you going to bed at a decent regular time? I'm not saying you have to be a nun or a monk and never go out. And of course, there's going to be the occasion where that doesn't work out. But in general, it's all about consistency. Consistently, on average, you're going to bed, at a decent time. You've done all your sort of sleep prep, if I can call it like that. You're having your protein, your yogurt or whatever before you go to bed. Maybe you're taking magnesium or you're spraying it on your muscles is a top tip because that really helps muscle recovery, helps sleep. And these are fundamental things that everyone can do. A little self-check. How are these things going? Have you slipped into some, bad habits, or you're being too rigid in your habits, frankly, is often the case. So, be kind to yourself, listen to your body. If you actually feel tired, your body's trying to say something. Just, maybe you have been overdoing it and you need to rejig things. And also the other thing is according to where you are in your life. You mentioned, uh, if especially if you've got a young child, well, right? You have to be kind to yourself, and you of course you want to look after your child, but actually you can't look after your child really well if you fundamentally are subpar. So you need to take care of yourself, and also your hormones change as you get older. So what worked for you when you're 21, I'm afraid it's not necessarily going to be the same when you're 51, right? So you have
Yeah.
to be, this is all about flexibility, I think, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah, and I guess as well when you look across the cycle, which I do would like to come on, but I've got one question before that. But
Hmm.
when we look at the cycle, we are meant to be flexible, right?
Yeah,
Across the cycle. In fact, let's just go on to that now. But
yeah,
I'll circle back. The other question is around the pill, but that will still lead on. So we are as we are cyclical beings, and
yeah, exactly.
we're meant to be flexible. I know that the research around training for your cycle is limited at the moment, but is there anything that you can advise us when it comes to living with our cycle? Like, are there certain things that we should be doing at different times of the month?
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, we have to respect that our hormones are changing
Yeah.
over our lifetime, yes, but particularly for women over the cycle, they change a
So
lot.
I guess as well, like if last week you felt on top of the world, but this week you're not feeling as good,
Yeah,
that's
there could be
okay.
there could be a reason. So, I mean, the menstrual cycle. Um, I mean, just going back to that initial point you made, it's like, people say, oh, what are the recommendations? So the first thing we say is that women are individual, and so women will experience menstrual cycle differently. So some women will report that they actually don't feel a lot different during their menstrual cycle, so that's great. For others, they will say that there are real problematic times. The point is you have to be your own hormone detective. So
Love that.
don't take what other people say or what even some of these apps say. Making your own notes so you get to know how you feel during that cycle and if there's a pattern. But the general things to look out for, the main flashpoints of the menstrual cycle are number one, the menstruation itself. You can get period pain and cramps, and most women will get a certain degree of that. Okay. But if it's, really causing some problems, some sort of self-help tips. Number one, actually studies show that continuing to do some sort of exercise where possible, but the sort of exercise that's very slow and sort of stretching the body. I used to find that swimming was really good. So, just to get the blood flow going to relieve, to help with that, the cramps. Of course, maintain hydration and iron intake because you'll be losing blood, literally, right? Prophylactic anti-inflammatories. So if you know that you are prone to have painful periods, and rather than waiting until the pain builds up, start taking the anti-inflammatories, always with food. Okay, just over that duration, because people, of course, we want to avoid medication, but these are some simple self-help things. Of course, if the pain, persists despite these self-help tips and every single cycle, and it's really, quite debilitating, then of course, we wonder about endometriosis, and it's important to raise that point.
You said about the anti-inflammatories.
Yes.
What's that?
So those are anti-inflammatories like Nurofen, things like this, just over the counter, right? You don't
Okay,
need
so
prescription.
literally
Over the counter anti-inflammatories, right? But
right.
make sure you always take them with food, because otherwise if you take them on an empty stomach, well, you shouldn't have an empty stomach, should you, in the morning?
No.
Yeah, you're right. Otherwise it can cause some gastric irritation. So
Okay.
the menstruation bit can be a flashpoint. The other typical potential flashpoint is the luteal phase. So this is after you've ovulated, and hopefully this means then your progesterone hormone is going high. Okay. And so the progesterone has the effect of increasing the metabolic rate. So this is why your body temperature goes up. This is the theory behind the ovulation thermometer.
And why we get cravings?
Voila, because if our metabolic rate is increased, we need more energy. Aha. So don't feel bad. This is the other thing. If you don't realize this, you feel kind of almost sometimes guilty. It's like, my
Yeah.
goodness, why am I feeling so hungry? And I'm eating what I ate the same last week, but now I'm feeling really hungry. And you
And even
question
across,
yourself.
yeah, even across like skinny talk now of like, and we see it all the time, don't we, about like how to curb your cravings before your period. And the conversations I have is people talk about being hungry before their period as if it's such a bad thing.
No, no, well, it's a natural physiological thing. So in those 2 weeks before your period arrives, so that's the luteal phase, you need more energy. So no wonder your body does what it says. I feel hungry, please eat something. But if you think this is like, oh my God, a bad thing, and so the cravings are, what happens is you're trying to resist this hunger urge. You resist until you have to crack, and then you might be tempted to eat a whole chocolate bar. Nothing against chocolate, but what would have been better is if you preempted this. You realized that you need more energy. You'd had an extra banana, and then, sure, you can still have a square of chocolate, but you're not feeling like this
They're
urgency
out
to
of
eat. Yeah,
control.
exactly. You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about, that hangry thing we talk about. So just being, again, it's all about being on the front foot, anticipating that you will need more energy. So pack the extra banana, pack the extra cereal bar. And again, it's very individual. Some studies say that, an extra banana a day will cover it, but others say actually, it's probably going to be more like the equivalent of 3 bananas or whatever, so again, it's finding out what works for you. That's really the most important thing for the luteal phase. Make sure you're having that nutrition. Also, that some women have PMS, which is basically the combination of these physical things and mental things, low mood, or all this sort of thing. So, we go back to the basics. Make sure you are getting out in the fresh air, doing some exercise. Make sure you're looking, eating a little bit more. All these sorts of things. Actually, vitamin D is meant to be helpful. So if you're not taking your vitamin D supplement, please do. For breast tenderness, evening primrose oil. And if the PMS is really problematic in terms of mood and physical things, then the Royal College Obstetrics Gynecology recommend chasteberry, non-prescription. So that's worth looking into. So those are the two flashpoints of the menstrual cycle, typically for all women. If you look at some of the apps, they will say, oh, you're in your late follicular phase. So this is the bit when the estrogen is going high just before ovulation. You feel amazing, go and do your strength work. And I had one cyclist who said, I thought there was something wrong with me. This was the worst time in my cycle when I do feel flat. All my teammates were saying, oh, look, I'm feeling great. And he was like, oh my God, something's wrong with me. And I said to her, no, there's nothing wrong with you. That's just you personally. That's your personal flashpoint of the cycle, right? Whereas actually she wasn't so bad with the menstruation bit. So it's going to be slightly variable. So I think that's the other key thing to say. If you feel slightly different and not, like really super great in follicular, for example, that's fine. but just be aware of that and figure out what are the things you need to do to help you through the
Yeah,
menstrual cycle so you can be at your best throughout the menstrual cycle. That's what we're aiming for. And the only way you're going to figure that out is if you are making your own notes. I know apps are all the thing. Of course, I'm very old. We didn't even have apps. So, pen and paper is perfectly acceptable. Or if you are recording your exercise somewhere on, Strava or Garmin or whatever it might be, then you could add in your own notes there, for example. It doesn't have to be flash or fancy, but just so then you can also coordinate it with what's going on in your life. Actually, the reason you might be feeling very hungry is because you haven't eaten very well, So,
yeah.
making sure there are
And I guess,
other things.
yeah, and I guess there's a knock on, right? If you really restricted last week, of course you're going to be hungry
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
And I think often people think of, we're so fixated on looking at days, aren't we? Like,
Yep.
today I feel like this, and it's
Yep.
like, yeah, but you might be feeling like this because of what happened 2, 3 days
Yeah,
ago.
yeah. Well, like we said, the hormones, I mean, some hormones are very quick, like adrenaline are very quick, fight and flight. But most hormones, they do take some time because, like we said, they've got to take their time to go into the DNA and the nucleus. So they're not reflecting necessarily what's happening that particular day. So it's also what's happened gone before. So that's what I mean about recording things. But so if you have a log where or some way of recording it or making, I do suggest you put it down somewhere, pen and paper or app or I don't know, notes or whatever it is, because you think, oh, I'm going to remember that, but actually, I have lots of lovely women who come and say, I don't understand it. I'm feeling really low in mood. And I said, well, is there a particular time when you feel low in mood? It's like, oh, I'm not really sure. I would say, well, write it down. And then when they come back, it's like, oh, it's always in these 2 weeks before my period. You know what I mean? So you can look at the trends and look at other things and make notes of other things that have happened. If you've been out very late night, it's like, oh, well, I think that's probably why you're feeling tired.
Yeah.
So making a note so you'll understand, get to know your own body, make your own personal notes wherever that might be of what's happening in your life and, things like this. And then it will make more sense. And so you can take action and make adjustments. Otherwise, you're just kind of shooting in the dark.
Yeah, definitely. Which I guess sort of leads me on to talking about the pill.
Uh-huh.
I could not talk to you without bringing it up. How on earth can we get to know our bodies while being on the pill?
Yeah.
How does it
Well,
affect us?
Well, the first thing to say, Chloe, I think we should be clear that, it's every woman's choice what form of contraception she wants to use, right? And by the way, there are very effective barrier methods. Condoms are the only thing that are contraception and protect against STDs. So, but what about the hormonal contraceptions? What are options? What are out there? So there's the combined oral contraceptive pill, which is what everyone sort of calls the pill. Typically, you take the pack such that you're going to have a withdrawal bleed on a regular basis. That is not a period. It really winds me up.
Yeah.
You
Same.
know this, I was going to make this point. When a woman presents, maybe her periods has stopped entirely and she's told, take the contraceptive pill. This will bring back your periods. This is
Oh
total
my
and
goodness.
absolute rubbish. We just make
Yeah.
that sure that's clear.
And it's the same with, if someone, I've seen people that are like really, really underweight, but they think they're absolutely fine, or maybe they train loads and loads and loads and they don't really eat that much. I'm like, my like period radar's going off. And she's like, yeah, yeah, but I have a period. And then it turns out she's on the pill.
Yeah. So that's really so, the combined contraceptive pill, to be fair, is actually can be really useful
Yeah.
in certain medical conditions.
Yeah.
Like PCOS, where the testosterone is very high, actually, and the woman's having periods in the first place, cycles, but there's some issue, for example, PCOS, high testosterone, then actually the pill is a good call. But if you're presenting, you haven't got any periods, i.e., this is a red flag, your hormones are not happy and very low and switched off. Why in the world would you suggest taking something that will keep the hormones low, keep them down? It's like, what? Because if you look at the graph of what happens to your hormones when you take the contraceptive pill, squashes them all flat. Isn't that beautiful fluctuation we see in the menstrual cycle? Squashes them all flat. And so if your hormones are already flat because you're overdoing the exercise, underdoing the fueling, there's no way you should be reinforcing that, you see. And also the other that you will be told maybe, oh, take the pill, regulate your periods, bring back your periods, rubbish, right? But also, oh, then it will give you some estrogen. Your bones will be happy, la la la. False. Again, false. Right? There is a form of estrogen in the pill, absolutely, but it's kind of like a fake one. It's not the real one. And the bones aren't stupid.
Yeah.
They're like, what is that rubbish? That's not estrogen as I know it. I'm not responding to that. So, and so this is
Hey, it's
hopefully.
like when someone tries to give you not Heinz ketchup. You're like,
Yeah.
I know
No,
that. I
exactly. You
know
know the
that.
taste is different. It's different. Exactly. The body is very discerning. So, I mean, hopefully, unfortunately, it's a little bit slow, these things getting round, but I got nice to update the guidelines. This is nice. These are the guidelines for doctors, but, patient people can look at these guidelines. And specifically, I said, please, can you adjust this? So if a woman hasn't got a period switch off, FHA, underfueling, overtraining, whatever it is, for bone protection, please, not the pill, HRT, right? And so it says it quite clearly there. But unfortunately, as you know, you and I, we see this still occurring. And I think the reason is from a psychological point of view. Everyone feels better. The GP feels better because they've written a prescription. It's like that.
Yes.
And
Sold.
the person feels better because they almost want to believe that this is a period. It's like psychologically, okay, I'm
Yeah.
fine bleeding, something's happening. But actually it's not really helpful in the long term. So that's the story about the pill. I just want to mention the other type of hormonal contraception. So that's the combined one. So it's got estrogen
Okay.
and progesterone in. And then there are other progestogen only ones. So they just have the synthetic progesterone in them. For example, there's the mini pill so-called. There's the implant, there's the depot injection, Mirena coil, right? That's
Yeah.
something that releases synthetic progesterone. But all of those, majority of them nowadays, the more whatever generation of pills were on there, anyway, they're a bit similar to the contraceptive pill because they squash all the hormones flat. No surprise, because both of them contain synthetic progestogen, which is the one that makes the hormones squash and flat. So same argument. You don't want to be taking that if you haven't got any periods because it's the same thing. But again, also, to be fair, there are some situations where you would actually suggest this. Switch off the hormones, switch off the bleeding. Typically, you don't get any sort of withdrawal bleeding on these. Someone with endometriosis, right? You put the Mirena coil there, it will stabilize the uterus lining. The person won't have any sort of bleeding, so they won't get the pain. So you see what I mean? It's not a blanket statement that all
Yeah.
hormonal contraception is bad. It is bad for some women, but it's good for some women. So it depends on the individual.
And you mentioned that the pill basically flatlines us. So when we come off the pill, what do we see happen?
Well, if your hormones, if you've been having cycles before and you went on it truly for contraception purposes and you come off,
Yeah.
then your periods should restore.
Yeah.
But obviously, if they were flatlined in the first place, unless you made some changes, they're going to remain flatlined, right?
Yeah.
So, and I want to be clear about if your periods don't restore after coming off the contraceptive pill,
Yeah.
the definition of amenorrhea, lack of periods, is 3 months. So that's
Okay.
another myth to bust.
Yeah.
Some women say, oh, well, my periods didn't come back after 3 months, but I was told not to worry. This is a post-pill amenorrhea, and they leave it a year, still not come back. It's like, oh, well, it will do at some point. That's not false. The definition of amenorrhea is no periods for 3 months. If your periods do not come back after 3 months of discontinuing any of these hormonal contraceptions, then that's a problem. And you need looking into that, you know?
Okay. And if someone's just come off the pill, what can they do to, I guess, help their hormones?
Well, guess what? Hippocrates. Just do all those things we've discussed, Chloe.
Okay.
Just get back to the fundamentals of make sure you're doing all those that good balance of the exercise and nutrition, etc. That will help restore your periods. But obviously, if you didn't have periods in the first place and you were given incorrectly the contraceptive pill and you haven't been working on adjusting things, then yeah, you're going to have to start again on that or keep going
Yeah.
on that, you know?
And I guess with that link to if you've just come off the pill, maybe you're doing really intense exercise like CrossFit, you might need to slow that down to reduce the cortisol.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, you know, all these things are stressors. So fasted training, under eating, that's a stressor to the body,
Yeah.
increased cortisol, but also the, you know, the overtraining, especially the intensity of the training. So
Okay.
it's the intensity that's the one, well, you know, the word gives it away, doesn't it? So it's not, we would never say not do any exercise at all, but we're just saying don't do that really high intensity CrossFit for the time being. So
Okay.
just go for, you know, some gentle walks, gentle swimming, you know, something like that. Just calm it down. And people are worried, oh, I'm going to lose fitness. Da, da, da. And you won't, okay, for this short time, right? It's
Okay.
just
Yeah.
a temporary thing.
So just managing that sort of stress.
Manage all sources of stress. Once your period restores, hopefully, then sure, we can, you know, we can gradually introduce stuff or change things, right? But it goes back to the analogy of, you know, the broken bone. I mean, if you have a broken bone and a cast on a leg, no one in their right mind is expecting you wouldn't go and try and do a CrossFit class, would you? You know?
No.
And equally, even once the bone is healed and the cast is off, you still know it needs time to strengthen. So again, you would not, common sense dictates, there's no way you would go back to your full training schedule straight away, would you? You would
No.
do the rehab thing, gradually increasing your thing. So, you know, a hormone injury, you have to treat it with exactly the same respect as a physical injury. You see, that's really the
And
key thing.
and would we say a hormone injury would be similar if you were coming off the pill? Like you would class that as a hormone injury?
Well, I think it depends what's happened before.
Okay.
If you were having regular periods before you went on the pill and you're taking it purely for contraception reasons, then you don't need to necessarily, you know, we've got no evidence to say that hopefully, unless you've changed something while you were on the pill. If
Yeah.
while you were on the pill you had suddenly started doing loads of intense exercise, then sure, that might, we'll have to see. But I'm thinking of the people who incorrectly have been put on the pill, who didn't have any periods to start with, put on the pill, now come off the pill. Yeah, definitely, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to do it. So I don't think it would be necessarily for everyone, Chloe, but it really depends what you've been doing while you've been on the pill, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
And also, I suppose there's no harm. Do you know what I mean? If you're anxious, oh God, my period's coming back, and maybe, oh, I don't know if maybe I was overdoing it. You've got nothing to lose with just taking a little bit of an easy time. And you know, if your period comes back actually, you know, very soon, within a couple
Yeah.
of weeks, then you that's great. Nothing has, you know, that was helpful and whatever. So it's kind of depends.
Okay, that's good to know. Right, one final question, Nikki. What's one message that you wish every active woman heard earlier in their life?
Well, I think to remember that Horme was the goddess of effort, energy, and action. So I want to dispense with hormones, female hormones, menstrual cycle being a negative thing. And certainly we want to dispel that myth. You know, if you're ever accused as a woman of being hormonal, take that as a compliment because you're being compared to a goddess of effort, energy, and action. So I really want the message to be a positive one.
Yes, I'm so
Hormones are
with you.
amazing and they're your power, they're your strength,
Yeah.
especially including female hormones. So I want to get rid of this negative narrative that is forced upon us at a very early teenage years, saying, oh, menstrual cycles, dreadful, blah, 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 everything, whatever. It's like, no, no, no. Sure, it can be a little bit challenging when your periods first start because it's a change, for sure. We accept that. But on the other hand, ultimately, you know, let's, rejoice that these hormones are amazing and really powerful and work for you. And it's also contradictory that when you come to menopause, suddenly everyone's like, oh my God, my hormones are really low. That's really awful. It's like, yes, but why are we almost promoting low hormones when you're young then? It makes no sense. So my message is to women especially, but men as well have hormones. You know, let's embrace the hormones. Let's have positive narrative around them. And then if you appreciate your hormones and you respect them, you'll definitely will hopefully reach your full health and your full potential.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm such a big fan of saying if someone says that you're hormonal, just be like, "Yeah, I know."
I'm a goddess of effort,
Yeah,
energy, and action. Hormone, quote them. Ancient Greek. There you go.
I love it. Nikki, thank you so much
My
for coming on.
pleasure.
I'll leave in the notes down below everywhere that anyone can find you. So if they are struggling, they can either read your books, read your research, or obviously book in with you as well. But Nikki, I know you're very busy, so I really, really appreciate this.
No,
This conversation is going to help so many people. So thank you so
my
much.
pleasure, Chloe. And if you could also add in there, I just thought it is on my website. There's a little questionnaire we developed called
Okay.
Peak, and you fill out some questions, and then you'll come up with a little report, little score, so you can get a feel. Are you overtraining? Are you underfueling? Or are you in the right balance? So
Okay,
that's free.
nice.
So it's a little quiz, if you will, right?
Yeah, that's
And that
so
might give
good.
you an indicator. But yeah, listen, thank you so much for discussing hormones with me. I love it. And yeah, I look forward. Any people want to come and have a, personal in-depth chat with the appointments or try the questionnaire or read the book. Yeah, that would be lovely. Okay.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much.
Cool.
See you later.
Bye.